Hi everyone. It's time for another multi-cloud live stream. Our show today is going to be focused on cloud migration. Before I get to that, but just a reminder that we're focusing between now and probably the end of the year around some of the best things that were at VMworld. So this today's show comes right out of that context. If you haven't if you didn't attend VMworld, you can still go out and see everything on demand. It's still most everything. So feel free after this to check it out. There's a lot of great content there, and the content we're seeing today comes right out of one of the sessions there. Hey, well, with us today is Phoebe Kim and Asaf Blustein, who just taught me how to pronounce his last name. And we're going to be focusing, like I said, on cloud migration. This comes out of a session that was at VMworld multi-cloud. Let's see if I remember this. 1050, right? You guys did a nice session there. So I'm going to ask Asaf and Phoebe to introduce themselves and to also talk about what we're going to see today. So Phoebe or Asaf, just jump in and let us know what we're going to talk about today and kind of tell us about yourself as well.
Again, I can start off. So hi, everyone. My name is Phoebe Kim. I'm a Senior Cloud Solutions Architect at VMware. And I'm actually just going to pass it off to Asaf, and he's going to tell you what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so hi, everyone. My name is Asaf. I am a Product Solution Architect for VMware Cloud. And today what we're going to talk about is automating HCX migration and deployment using multiple ways. There's multiple ways that you can do this. We are specifically going to show Power CLI and Terraform. So first of all, let me jump to screen share. So we'll have just a couple of slides. So first, what is HCX? So HCX really provides us with the ability to simplify workload migration and orchestration between different sites, between vSphere deployments, and for a certain extent, non-vSphere deployments to vSphere deployments. So this is really a major solution in our toolbox for our VMware Cloud offerings, because we can simplify and really kind of abstract that the multiple data centers that we have for workload migration. So what we're going to automate today, specifically with this, with Terraform, is kind of like the deployment and configuration of HCX. And this is really useful if you have multiple SDDCs, multiple deployments, multiple service meshes. And so the steps that we're going to follow is first, the two steps are kind of done for us already to deploy HCX in VMware Cloud on AWS. And as VMware Cloud on AWS is kind of a managed SDDC solution, the deployment there is really already automated for us. So it's literally just a button that we click to activate HCX, and then there's an automated workflow that just deploys the appliance, deploys the manager, and configures all of the connectivity for us. The only manual thing that we have to do there is really just enabling firewall rules to enable our on-prem HCX to connect to the cloud one. Next, what we're going to automate using Terraform is creating profiles and really creating that pairing between our on-prem HCX manager, which is just an OVA. So that's just, following a wizard, and then create site pairing between on-prem and cloud, and then a service mesh and network extension so we can actually start migrating workload. So with that, let's jump to the demo. So what I'm going to use here is Terraform. So if anyone can see my screen, I have just a Terraform configuration file using the HCX provider. So this is a community Terraform provider. However, it is based on HCX APIs. And I also have a variable file, so I can really simplify and make this configuration file a bit more repeatable. If I have more service meshes, more HCX environments, I don't have to create a separate config file for each and every one of them. I can just create a variable, and then I can customize either the variable file, or what I like to use actually more is to provide some default values in the variable file. If you're not familiar with Terraform, you can just set up a default value that if you don't specify anything else, that one will be provided. But I also like to create kind of a value variable file, where here I can specify for each individual environment, and this is just a dummy one because I don't want to expose our actual cloud passwords. But I can have multiple of these value files for each and every environment. And I will show you how to specify that in a bit. So just quickly, we'll jump to our vSphere environment. And as you can see, this is my on-prem environment. I have no cloud pairing. There's nothing here. And I will connect it to a VMware Cloud in AWS. There is one cloud pairing there for another lab, but it is not the lab that I'll be working with. So as you can see, all we have is just 2 HCX managers right now. And what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time here, because it does take a bit of time to actually deploy all the workloads, I'll first run the Terraform plan, and then we'll start talking about what is actually being configured there. So the first thing with Terraform is we need to, or ideally, we'll do a Terraform plan, which will just verify that everything is running correctly and we can communicate with everything. And as you can see, I'm specifying here this variable file where I have all of the specific values for this environment. So first run that, and it will let me know what is it going to do right now. So it's going to create all these resources, and we can see it's going to create 8 resources, and we'll go over each resource later. And now that we see that the plan is running successfully, and the plan is more of a what if scenario, we'll actually do a Terraform apply that will apply the actual plan that we're gonna that we're going to deploy all the resources and run it. So first thing, it does run kind of a validation first, similar to Terraform plan, but now it's also asking me, do you want to actually perform these actions? And I'll tell it yes, and it will take about 5-6 minutes at least to start running this, which gives us time to actually go over Terraform plan and see what we're trying to configure here. So Terraform works with this idea called, everything is a resource. So we need to just configure certain resources, and a resource can be a network profile, a service mesh, etc. So the first thing is we need to configure the HCX provider itself. So we need to provide it with username, passwords that we're going to connect to, and also the source HCX server. So with HCX, even though the destination is kind of the goal there, and the destination here in this specific case being VMware Cloud and AWS, everything is initiated from the source. And the source here is my on-prem environment. So I'm going to provide it with the HCX source environment. And then I'm going to configure a site pairing. A site pairing just connects the 2 managers together, nothing more than that. So they'll be aware of each other and can start creating service meshes. So I provide the username and password and the URL of the remote HCX server. Once that is being created, I can start creating network profiles. Now, what's interesting about HCX is that it is not imperative in a way that you say, oh, I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 appliances, and this appliance is going to have this IP, etc. Basically, what we provide is this concept of a network profile, which to a certain extent is just a pool of IPs, right? And then we'll provide context to those IPs later with a compute profile for what these things will be used. But that makes it a lot easier to manage and update, because you don't have to manage individual appliances. You just manage a desired state, very similar to what Terraform itself is doing. So I'll go over this specific network profiles, I have a couple of others that they're just very similar. So we just need to provide the site pairing that this network profile will be associated with. We need to provide it with a name and which port group it's actually going to use. IP ranges, and this can be just a single IP, a continuous IP range, or multiple blocks of continuous IPs. Doesn't really matter. The gateway, the subnet mask, DNS, and DNS suffix. And I also configured here a dependency on the site pairing to make sure that Terraform will follow these in logical order. They won't try to create a network profile before it created a site pairing. Then similarly, I configured 2 other profiles. And as you can see right now, these profiles don't really mean anything. It's just a bunch of IPs. So next, we provide a compute profile, and this really provides context to this. That means here where we'll deploy the HCX appliances, what networks they'll use, etc. So we provided with a name, the clusters that the appliances are going to be deployed in, what data stores they're going to be deployed in. And here we select HCX has 4 main network profiles. There's a 5th one for OSAM that I'm not using here. But basically, each network has a role of uplink network, for example, providing connectivity to the other side to actually move the data, vMotion to connect to the vMotion network, etc. So here we provide context for those for each of those network profile and what is going to be used. And this really depends on your specific environment, because my environment, for example, as you can see, I'm leveraging the management network profile for 2 different functions because I don't have a dedicated replication network. If, for example, I didn't have a dedicated uplink network, I would use the management for that one as well. So that really depends on your configuration. And next, we configure the services that we want to enable. And these are the types of migrations, WAN optimization, etc. And now compute profile as well just kind of provides us with a profile. And now we need to actually deploy the appliances, and we do that with a service mesh. And a service mesh, basically, it's very simple to configure because most of the configuration was done in the profiles already. So we just tell it, okay, this is the site pairing that we want to use. This is the compute profile that we're going to use. This is the remote compute profile that we're going to use. And most of the time, this is where we're done. But there's a couple of other things that I configured here. For example, number of network extension appliances, some WAN optimization that I can use, for example, limiting the bandwidth. And then, again, I can disable or enable services if, for example, the compute profile has more services that I want to enable. And then next, I also told it, while we're at it, just extend 2 networks. So it will simplify the migration later, and that Phoebe will cover in her demo. So I just tell it what is the service mesh that I'm going to use, what is the network that I want to configure, and how and what's the parameters of that network. I have 2 networks that I extended, one with Mon enabled and one with Mon disabled. And let's just see what we're doing right now. As you can see, it's already gotten to the network extension stage. So it means everything else is already created. So if we'll go here and just refresh the page, it doesn't refresh the whole plugin. But if we'll go to the site pairing, we'll see right now I have from my my on-prem lab to VMC on AWS, I already have a site pairing. And I also have an interconnect. In the interconnect stage, I can see that I have all the network profiles configured. I can see that I have a compute profile configured. And I also have a service mesh that is already up and running with all of the services up and enabled. And as you can see, I enabled application path redundancy and TCP flow conditioning as part of that as well. And we won't wait for that to finish because it does take a bit of time, but we can see that the network extension is already in progress, and we'll finish it. It takes it about, it actually completed. So we already have 2 extended networks as well. And now we're really ready to start running, to migrate workloads. And just think, if you have multiple HCX environments, it just changing a couple of values, and it just let Terraform do its thing, and you can start migrating workloads.
So, Saf, just recapping some of this, this is like laying the foundation, right, for like everything you need to do sort of on an ongoing basis, right? This is sort of creating the connectivity, sort of the sort of identifying what goes with what from on-prem and the cloud side, sort of just laying everything down, just so that when you get to ongoing operations, you're set up, right? Because I think this is something that I think comes up frequently on a lot of shows when I get into anything multi-cloud. That there's a foundation that has to be laid, particularly around the networking side of the house, in terms of like what pathways are going to be used, and sort of what networks will be laid down to address different needs that you have in the interconnectivity part of the puzzle for multi-cloud. Is that fair? Is that
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of so, because deploying HCX has certain layers to it, I will say. You have the managers that you need to deploy, and then, but the core of it is the service mesh, and that is what enables to do the migration, do the network extension, and it really differs from each environment because of the networking of each source network that is different, or any of our cloud platforms are sometimes different, but that is usually automated for you. So this kind of allows you to create that automation workflow on-prem as well for your environment. So if you need to redeploy, if you need to set up a second environment, it's really, you're not trying to right now think about, which networks do I use here, what do I do there, and what do I click here. You just point it to another variable file that you have, and you just let it run, and it just deploys it for you.
The reason I asked is I've seen a lot of this done sort of outside of HCX, because we've had a lot of different, we've had some of the different cloud scenarios. We've had Oracle Cloud, we've had AWS, of course, and Google, and there's a lot of this foundational stuff has to happen no matter like whether you're using HCX or not, in terms of laying down the network. But this seems to then sort of encapsulate that and provide you a vehicle for doing all that basic work as well, right? Which is otherwise you'd have to do through a different set of consoles and a different set of solutions. So you can kind of lay down all that foundation using HCX as sort of the focal point, rather than going into different consoles on different clouds to provide all this, to lay out all of the networking stuff, right? Is that a fair?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And cool. Kind of maintaining that desired state. And you can go, for example, to add services later, you'll just go and change the configuration file and deploy again, and it will just do it for you, instead of going to different GUIs and managing different things. You'll just do it from one central place.
Cool. That's nice. We hadn't seen that before, because we've again looked at these solutions without the context of HCX. So this is a really nice add to those stories we've done in the past around the different multi-cloud scenarios. Okay,
and
cool.
that is I think exactly the use case. You have multiple clouds. Let's say one SDDC, one on-prem, and you connect both to Azure and OCVS and VMC, for example. It's a different service mesh for each one of them, so you can maintain the same workflow for all of them from a single location.
Yeah, it gives you a nice central control plane for all that activity. It's good.
Okay, and with that, I'll pass it on to Phoebe to show us how to actually migrate workloads.
All right. Sharing my screen here. So just to begin with, I wanted to review some of the workload migration options that are available with, by using VMware HCX. So one of them is called cold migration. It's essentially just migrating powered off virtual machines from your on-premises data center to VMware Cloud on AWS. So this would be something for, your maybe non-critical workloads, any test dev workloads that don't have very strict high availability requirements. You can move a lot of virtual machines this way, just powered off from one environment to another. Now, The next one is called bulk migration. So this one I would call more warm migration. So you have those live, powered on virtual machines in the on-premises data center, and then HCX would replicate the virtual machines from the on-premises to VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. And then once they are replicated, then they would do a cutover where the virtual machines would then be powered on in the target environment. So I say warm because because it has a cutover it cuts over from the on-premises environment to VMware Cloud on AWS. It has a little bit of downtime, right? It's as if you're rebooting the virtual machine. So it's not it's not for too long, but it is essentially doing a little bit of downtime there. So it will be for maybe your production workloads that don't have as strict of high availability requirements, right? That you could still suffer a couple minutes of downtime for those, but you want to migrate a lot of virtual machines at once. So that's bulk migration. Now, for your critical workloads that you cannot suffer any downtime, you would probably use live migration. So there are really two types that HCX offers. So one is vMotion, which anyone who's used Vsphere is very familiar with, right? You move virtual machines with no downtime from one host to another, and in this sense, it would be from one data center to another. It is done serially. Now, if you want to do like a live migration of multiple VMs at once, you can use replication assisted vMotion, which is a service that HCX offers. Essentially, what it does is in the background, it replicates all the virtual machines in parallel that you want to migrate from on-prem to VMware Cloud on AWS. And then it would vMotion the virtual machines serially in that group. So it would essentially have no downtime, and you would be able to migrate multiple virtual machines at once instead of going through vMotion of every single VM that you have to move, right? So these are the different types of migrations that HCX offers. So you can automate this process as well with a lot of different tools, right? But for my demo, I'm going to share how you can do this using, well, there goes my connection to a live demo, but using PowerShell. So let me try to connect this to the remote desktop.
Oh. It's the demo gods. It's always, you never know. I mean, it's like if you didn't make the sacrifice in the morning and you're doing a live demo.
I know, right? Oh, well, thankfully it came back up, so it wasn't too big a deal, but all the fun. So everything that Asaf showed you, right, with HCX, that has already been done in this environment. This will just focus on actual migration of the virtual machine. So I have a VLAN-backed distributed port group here, VLAN 52, and I have one virtual machine on there. This is what I'm going to vMotion from this on-premises environment that I am in to the VMware Cloud on AWS environment. So Asaf also showed you the network extension, which has already been done for this environment. So I've already created the network extension going from the on-premises environment to VMC on AWS with this subnet here. So as you can see, I already have this available, and this is where the virtual machine is going to go to. So we will go back to the PowerShell script. I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see. So to use PowerCLI or PowerCLI HCX modules, you just have to make sure that you have the required modules in place so that you could actually use the command. So here, first, what I'm doing in this script is just prepping it, right? Making sure that the modules that you need are installed. If not, then it will throw an error and tell you like, hey, go make sure that this specific module is available for PowerShell. Now, and then what you have to do is first connect to HCX, right? So I have these variables defined here. So first is going to have the source HCX name. So that's going to be the HCX connector in your on-premises environment. And then you will provide the HCX username and password for that HCX connector in your on-premises environment. Then you have to define where it's going to. So you would define the destination vCenter FQDN as well as the destination HCX Cloud Manager, which is in your VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. So once you have all of those set up, the first thing you'll do is connect to the source HCX so that you could get the objects from the source HCX site. So that would include the source HCX manager and then you would get the site object from the destination HCX as well. So you need these objects before you can do anything with it. You can create network extension. This is just an example on how you can create a network extension using PowerCLI. But to do any of these like network extension, right, or use any of the migration types or initiate that using PowerCLI, you would need these HCX objects that you've collected up here. So I'm going to skip over the creating network extension, but the idea is the same, right? You have the variables defined in terms of, which layer 2 or segment that you want to extend, the interconnect appliance that you will be using, the subnet of the segment that you'll be extending, etc. And then you will use the new HCX network extension command essentially with the required variables in order to create that network extension. So that's just an example. I commented that out for now. Now to migrate a virtual machine, the same idea here, you would create the variables for all the required fields that you need in order to run the HCX migration command. So first, you would give the destination compute resource. So in our case, in VMC on AWS, it would be the compute resource pool. You would have the destination folder, the destination data store, which for VMC on AWS, it has to be the workload data store vSAN data store essentially. And then you would define where your current virtual machine is. So in terms of the network. So here I define the source network name and then give the type, which in my case, I'm using the distributed virtual port group. And then you would define which network the virtual machine is going to. So this is the name of that extended network, the NSXT segment in my VMware Cloud on AWS environment. You would create a network mapping of those two, the source and the destination network. And then you would define which virtual machine you're moving. We're actually going to move virtual machine 2. So let me make that change real quick. Here, I'm just only doing one virtual machine, but you could create an array of virtual machine objects and then create a for loop or anything to go through the migration of all of the virtual machines. You don't have to run, do this once and then come back and change the name and do it again, right? You can create a loop for that instead. But here I'm just showing just one. So this is where the migration is being done. So it would specify the virtual machines and any details about the migration. So for example, I'm going to use vMotion, but you can use bulk migration or cold migration or the replication assisted vMotion if you'd like. So you can define the type there, provide all the details of the migration itself. And then you can also define some of the customized settings essentially for the virtual machines. Like if you wanted to upgrade your VMware tools for the virtual machines during the migration, you can set that. So there are different options that you can use here, which is available in the UI if you were to do it manually anyway. So this is the script. Let's just run it. So to run that, you'd open PowerShell, go to the directory where the file is, and just run that. And it should start. So the script, I have it right out as it goes so that I know where the script is going or where it is in the process. So first, right now, it's connecting to the source site HCX, which it did. So it gives me back the server and the username that it used to connect to the source HCX. And then it's going to get those HCX objects. So it's getting the source HCX object right now. And then it should be getting the destination HCX object as well, which should show in a minute. Not literally a minute, but in a couple of seconds. This is like the stuff that we'd cut out in a recording of us writing. There we go. So
it's that's fine. I do have a question because like You can do all these things right through the UI. Would it be the UI of HCX that you would be doing them in, or because but you could also support, I think, sort of the core messengers. You can support a whole library of automations to do specific tasks that you're sort of do on a regular basis and sort of need to have some level of flexibility around what those automations do, right? So it's sort of I think the point of some of this, right?
Yeah, I'll show you where when we go to check and see the migration that has started with the script, I'll show you, essentially where you would do it in the manually as well, which is literally in the same spot. But here it's maybe it's a little hard to see. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to zoom in here, but yeah, so the destination HCX object that's here, you'll see all the details that we've provided in regarding the migration, right? In terms of where it's going and what source and destination networks we're using, which VM we're migrating. And then once you start the migration, it's going to test it, making sure, do a validation essentially that it's going to be fine. So it's like, hey, validation is successful, so let's start the migration. And then it provides you with all the information about this specific migration that you've started. So you can see this in the UI as well. So you would go to the on-premises Vsphere client, go to HCX. I see a question. Is it possible for HCX to do warm migration? Yes, the bulk migration essentially will be the warm migration. So in HCX, you would go to migration. Let me close all these other connections that I have. You can see I have a lot of different ones. But this is the service mesh that we're looking for. So going from on-premises to the VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC. This is the one we've just started, right? 10:40 a.m. I guess that's Pacific time. But here we have the virtual machine where we are vMotioning, doing a vMotion. I'm pretty sure that's not a verb. So we're doing a vMotion of the virtual machines. And this has been kicked off by the script. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but once it's done, it'll say migration complete. And then you can see, where it went and which ID and all of that stuff. So, and this is where you would manually migrate.
vMotioning enough, and we get enough people to say it, it'll enter the lexicon because it'll get added to the dictionary eventually.
I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who's ever said vMotioning, so definitely not alone in that one. But yeah, this is it.
Cool. That was good. I think this is cool. It's very cool. I think a lot of people aren't familiar with HCX. They kind of hear about a lot of other products, but I think HCX really is a great solution for for moving workloads. I found it cool that it seems like live migration, when you're doing a large, is kind of a mix of what you showed with warm, right? Because you're replicating sort of behind the curtains and then sort of moving things serially as you go. But I thought that was pretty interesting. I really hadn't realized how that happened when you were trying to do it in bulk.
Bulk. The cool thing about that, and that's something that Phoebe mentioned. If you like, a lot of customers, what they'll do is they'll do planning and verifying and plan migration waves, and then just put everything in a CSV file, for example, and then they'll feed the CSV file to a script similar to what Phoebe did right now, and then it just goes through that and just starts the migrations. But the cool thing about the bulk migration, because it's warm, because basically it's replicating a VM and then powering on the other side, Phoebe showed this, that you can do a lot of other things. Like, for example, you can upgrade VMware tools, you can upgrade the VM hardware, all of these types of things. So if you think about, like, if you're already migrating, you can do this batch operation on a lot of VMs, because you're already planning downtime for, even if it's for a couple of minutes or an hour with the warm migration. It's all of a sudden HCX is not only simplifies the migration and orchestration of it, but also other day two operations that sometimes you just forget to do because there's so many things that an administrator has to do right now anyways. And upgrade the hardware, you can re-IP them. It's really unique in what it can provide you and the amount of possibilities that you can do with it, and that you can automate as well. which makes it a lot easier if you have thousands of VMs. You know, you don't.
Yeah, I think you definitely want to automate as much as possible and routinize it so that there's a lot less thinking about did this happen or that happen. I think that makes complete sense. And then, you know, I also love the fact that you guys were focused on sort of, you know, automation that, you know, sort of tying things in at the API level, because I think that's sort of where everybody is now, right? You have sort of processes in place, continuous processes that you just want to run, and you don't want people jumping into the middle of them. So I think that's great. It was awesome. Hey, we've got no questions in queue. That was awesome. Hey, thanks so much for doing that. And I think you guys I'll remind our audience that they can see the full session if they go to VMworld, and you know, even though it's past, that content's available. You do have to register for it still, but you can see that and lots of other sessions across both, you know, everything that VMware does, including multi-cloud and app modernization and digital workspace. So I recommend that for anybody that might be listening. Reminder to our audience, we try to come to you every, well, we're sort of in a weird space in our schedule where we come every, you know, at least once a week on a Tuesday or a Thursday. We'll probably get back to our regular schedule of every twice a week when we get into the next year. Thanks so much, Asaf and Phoebe. Any last thoughts on anything? Where you're going for the holidays, or sort of like what you're working on? Any thoughts before we sort of end this?
I don't have any big plans, but it looks like I actually have to move in December, so I'll be in boxes, and Asaf will make fun of me for, you know, with my video, with my green screen, because everything else I'm hiding the background. But no, nothing crazy.
I'm still planning for the holidays, but yeah, no, I mean, mostly what I'm working on right now is multi-cloud initiatives, and with both VMware Cloud and AWS and the other hyperscalers. So if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to reach out to us both on Twitter. And yeah, if you have any questions about HCX or multi-cloud, let us know.
Yeah, we'd be happy to answer.
Cool. And one final reminder to our audience, if you like what you see, subscribe to the channel. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks. And thanks for coming and being on, Asaf and Phoebe. And we'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.